Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Express. This is our interaction with experts with whom we discuss developments in our immediate neighborhood and beyond. Do click on the new Indian Express website and on Global Express and share. This week, we are looking at our immediate and extremely aggressive neighbor, China, that has had no compunctions about flexing its muscles militarily and undiplomatically, so to speak. The Doklam confrontation remains unresolved. Now, a few days ago, we had Beijing lodging a diplomatic protest with India over Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Arunachal Pradesh last week, where he dedicated the newly built Sela Tunnel to the nation. China reiterated its claim over the area. It said that India's move will only complicate boundary issues. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said that Zangnan, which is what they call Arunachal Pradesh, is Chinese territory. And he also said that China has never recognized the so-called Arunachal Pradesh illegally set up by India and firmly opposes it. So obviously, the comments that have been made by this gentleman, do raise a lot of questions. The Sela Tunnel, which India has built at a huge cost of 825 crores at an altitude of 13,000 feet in Arunachal, is supposed to be very, very critical because it connects the strategically linked located Tawang with the West Kamang district and Tezpur. And it's obviously our move to, fortify and connect Arunachal Pradesh in such a way that that there can be no doubts in anybody's mind that it is Indian territory. Today, we know through some exclusive footage on China's recent moves as it seeks to sort of cast doubt over the status of Arunachal Pradesh. We have Professor Nithiyanandam Yogeshwaran from Takshashila Institution, a Bangalore-based think tank. He's an expert on geospatial intelligence. He also heads the Geospatial Research Program at Takshashila, and he is the author of the Takshashila Geospatial Bulletin, which is the only monthly open access newsletter which addresses India's strategic affairs through a geospatial lens. Welcome, Professor, for making this presentation, which we'll start in a few minutes. Joining us today to give us an insight into the actual military-to-military buildup is Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh, who's retired, who now heads the Center for Land Welfare Studies. He's a highly decorated officer. He's held multiple posts of immense importance. He served in Ladakh, in Jammu and Kashmir, and was Chief of Staff for the Eastern Command, and is an author too, Grey Zone Warfare. Obviously a must read in these current times. Welcome, General.
Thank you.
And also with us is a no less distinguished voice, in fact, the most respected voice on China, Ambassador Ashok Kanta, who was Ambassador to China from 2014 to 2016. He's director now, Institute of Chinese Studies, distinguished fellow at Vivekananda International Foundation. Welcome, Ambassador. It's a privilege to have you on our show.
Thank you, Nina.
So let's start with your presentation, Professor. You have exclusive, never seen before maps that show China's slow but steady build-up along our border in Arunachal Pradesh. You've tracked the Chinese construction in areas east of Bhutan of roads, homes, buildings, and what you say could be buildings that are used for military purposes as well. There are helipads, an airport. Most alarmingly, you talk about one site where China has intruded 300 meters into our territory and another 6 kilometers into Indian territory. I hope I'm not misquoting you. Although this is based on a Survey of India map, it's part of a Pentagon alert as well, you say, and you caution that the cartography on OpenStreet maps are more in line with China's cartography than ours. So we'll start with your presentation on what is happening in Arunachal Pradesh. Please go ahead, particularly the two Chinese settlements that you've tracked through satellite imagery.
Yeah, thank you, Nina. I will now open the presentation. So the current study that we have, which we have revealed it a week ago, is based on a larger study that we are conducting on mapping border settlements, approximately 100 kilometers range from the India-China border within the Tibet regions. Now, this is published in an open access platform called Substract. People can make use of it by using this link. And this is an overview of the different locations that we have mapped through remote sensing algorithm to figure out
Where exactly is it, Professor? Could you
yeah,
explain that?
I'll take you through. These are the settlements which we have mapped on the four districts of Arunachal, starting from Tawang and up to a range of 100 kilometers. So you can see the boundary of India here, and then further 100 kilometers down this line from each of these four districts, starting from Tawang, we have put up all the settlements here. Now, these are the two zones that we have identified, which are actually much closer to the border than any other settlements. So we have covered it exclusively in our report with a special, edition. What we have actually covered in that report is the two zones. We named it as Zone A and Zone B. The Zone A is an unnamed village, and which means the developments in these areas are fresh, which has started in the middle of 2023, and then it's still ongoing. And the
Isn't it
Zone
close
B,
to a river, Professor? You said it was close to a
yeah,
river.
it is close to Millen River. I'll take you through on this to give an overview to the audience. The Zone A is an area where it is fresh. The settlements are fresh, whereas Zone B is a place which is pretty known for the dispute. It's called Migutan, Longju, and Lower. There are three sites we have identified in the Zone B. So the Zone A and Zone B are very close to the boundary line provided by Survey of India. In fact, the Zone A is something which is bisected by the line, and in case of Zone B, the Migutan is on the north of the line, and Longju and Lower village is on the south of the line. Now, I will.
So does that mean it's south? When you say north of the line, that means it's in Chinese territory, and south of the line, it is in Indian territory?
Yeah, according to the boundary line, which is available to public from the Survey of India portal.
Okay.
So when you look at this map, again, the one which is colored is the Arunachal Pradesh boundary, and the Zone A and Zone B are located in two different places. And Zone A is on the banks of Millen River, approximately 65 kilometers west of Tuting in Arunachal Pradesh, and 15 kilometers from Mainling in Tibet Autonomous Region. It's on the same valley where mainland exists. Meanwhile, Zone B is located on the Tisari River, approximately 50 kilometer northwest of Nacho and 53 kilometer southeast of Nang County in Tibet Autonomous Region. So, but this Zone B, as I said earlier, has been in dispute for a very long time. Now, I will take you through Zone A, which I called it as an unnamed border village, which is located on the valley of Manling. When we look at the satellite imagery, it exactly looks like this. This is a place where before 2023, the place were like this. You can see it actually bisected by the boundary line. Here you can see the yellow color line, which you can often see in Google Maps, and the blue
Yeah.
color line, which I've actually plotted Survey of India boundary line, which are both are almost similar. But what you can see before 2023 is the two small, tents which are exist and which are not identified in detail in any of the studies in the past. Whereas the development happened in 2023 when we looked at from the time series of satellite images, we could able to figure out when the land clearing process started in this area, the first level of construction started, and then what is the current scenario. This is little dull because it is from the coarser resolution satellite imagery, whereas this is the same place of November 2023 that we can see it from high resolution satellite imageries. Um, you can see approximately 100 structures are coming up on the eastern side of the Millen River, and you can see a road which is going towards a military structure on the other side. So this area is with an area of 0.11 square kilometer and at an altitude of 3142. More importantly, it is on the slope and it is developed on a barren land which was there for more than close to 2 decades. Now this is occupied and this has been filled with this
This
kind
is
of structures.
2023.
Yes, in 2023, as I've shown
Yeah.
in the previous satellite images.
Okay.
Um, this is about zone A. The zone B is, as I said, it is bisected by this boundary line. And the site one, in zone B, we have three sites. The site one
Yeah.
is McMahon, that's on the northern side. That was a village with couple of shelters in the, let's say 15, 20 years ago, when I look into the satellite imageries. Whereas the development has happened over a different period of time. Whereas Longju is like around 500 meters from the line, and then Lower village is approximately 5.5 kilometers from that line. Now, this is how it looks in satellite imagery. You can see the slope, the valley which slopes towards south, and the development happened here. This was once a very small village. Now a massive construction happened over here, and then this is a place where you have couple of military complex, and then this is a place where you have dual shelters. Further down the line, the roads are still continuing to approximately 2 more kilometers towards south. Now, this is a table. I have compiled it in order to bring out the exact time period and the changes that we can see in this area. Let's focus on this dotted column, the first column, where you can see once in 2000, it was a small village, whereas in 2013, the land clearing has started for building couple of structures, which are eventually, the development, first phase of development completed in 2019 or in the beginning of 2020, where 100 plus houses were
You're
established.
referring to which village in particular now? Is it
It is
Migutin,
McMahon.
Longju?
It
Migutin.
is
Okay.
McMahon. Yeah. So then what happened is a second phase of development that has started in the mid of 2022, but interestingly, it has completed in the end of 2022 itself. The one difference between the past and the present we have observed in this side and the next side also, the development, the construction activities are very fast these days. And this is
Mhm.
kind of dual
Okay.
purpose houses, which is 500 meters above the line. Now, this is a satellite image which brings you the scenario over 2021 and 2023, the end of 2023. These are
All
the
right.
houses which are established in the first phase, and these are the newly established houses in November 2023. So these
Mhm.
are all we looked out from the period of satellite images. And once there was a very small hut over here, but then this was on the first phase, and these are the developments happened on the second phase rapidly on this region.
Quite
Now
remarkable.
moving,
Yes.
yeah. Now let's move on to the second spot. This spot has only two complexes. The two complexes, from the aspects, it is believed to be a military complex, where you can see the first one has taken time. It is the land clearing has started in 2018, but then the first sign of construction took place in 2019, and then the structure completed in February 2021 approximately. Whereas the second structure, which is not available even in open access Google imageries, is started in the mid of 2023, and then it is completed by the end of 2023 itself. So this is an area of this two complexes, the land area, which is in Longju, and then it is approximately a distance of 550 meters from the line. This appears like this. This is the first building until 2023, you can say. And then there's a new complex which is established on this line. Initially, it was a river bank, and then this flat piece of land is reclaimed, and then the construction is established. And then the new construction looks like a supporting construction for this. By itself, also, it is quite big.
So, Professor,
So
this
the
Longju village, just to clarify, is you said bisected and is south of the line. Does that
yeah.
mean that it is in Indian territory?
It is on the other side of the boundary, which is given by Survey of India. So whatever
Okay.
I believe, if that is a boundary officially given, then which indicates it is on this side of the territory as well.
It's on the side of?
It's inside this line. So inside our Indian territory, because the boundary
Okay, fine.
is
All right. Yeah,
given as
go
an
ahead.
Arunachal
I just
Pradesh
want to
boundary,
clarify
which
that.
means it
Fine,
is
fine.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the third site is the lower village. It is an interesting site because the development all started in 2020 and ended in 2020, and there is no further developments in these areas when I looked at the series of images. But interestingly, this was largely addressed in media when Pentagon report was also saying that there's the set of houses which are established further down south the boundary line, and it was reported at that time in media at larger numbers. Whereas we can still find there's not much of activity these days. You can see here, once it was empty land with before the land clearing happens. Once the land clearing happens, soon after the construction is established in that area. So this is about the three areas we have, the Zone A and Zone B. What commonality that exists between Zone A and Zone B is um, the settlement today, as I said earlier, are established in a much quicker way. And it all, when I look at a series of satellite images, we could able to say it is all established during the period of pre-monsoon, and then during monsoon, the construction has almost reached some good stage. That's the pattern we can see it all these constructions which are established in these areas. So anything they want to construct, it is predominantly started in the pre-monsoon season. The land clearing starts at that time, and it looks like the construction can happen during during the monsoon season, and other seasons are not favorable for that. uh,
Professor, if
on
I
the
could
other
just
way,
butt in for a minute, if I just
yeah.
ask one question, the construction has obviously happened at a very rapid pace through 2022 and 2023. And you're now saying that two of them have been are on our side of the border. You also mentioned a helipad and an
Yeah.
airfield, right?
Oh,
Where are they?
Migutin. Yeah, Migutin is something where you can see has an helipads, but these
Hmm.
helipads are there even in 2021. There's not
Okay.
new helipads, whereas the
Hmm.
airport is actually something we have found a little bit inside the inside from the border, but that is part of a larger study which we haven't pushed up in this edition. But there's a new airport which is not fully operational, but it is also coming up, which is established in last 4 years. So that is also coming up. Um, but that we haven't kept out in this report.
Right.
You can see the
Yeah.
second one among the commonality. The first one is this. The second one is wherever it is quite the easy one as well. Wherever we can find a road adjacent to a river, it gives a potential opportunity for them to construct some developments on that area. And similarly, wherever we see a land clearing, it indicates that there could be a quick chance of occupation in that area. And we have found not only these two settlements, we have found little bigger settlements, and even settlements which are little inside from the borderline up to 100 kilometers in our larger research which is ongoing. Yeah.
Okay.
So people
All
can
right.
make use of this from this substack link. Thank you.
Hmm. Thank you very much. I am now going to throw this open to to both the ambassador and the general, because to me it looks like China is trying to create, by building in these areas, it then becomes a de facto occupation, and it sort of implies that it's always been there. I mean, is Zone B in Arunachal Pradesh contested? Has General, can you tell us whether the Chinese have actually had a presence in Arunachal? I thought that Arunachal was one area where they had no presence at all.
Uh, Nina, first of all, thank you very much for calling me over for this program.
No.
Uh, As far as Arunachal is concerned, there are certain agreed upon disputed areas between the two sides. Patrolling actively takes place in these areas, and both sides sometimes have clashes, they push each other, but ultimately these people go back, right? And there is some kind of a always a altercation which keeps happening periodically. Yangtze was also one of the examples of a similar kind of a altercation, although in the Yangtze area, the quantum of troops was over 200, which was fairly large, but
Uh-huh.
we got the in the right time. As far as these I mean, what is being touted as encroachments, see, these areas are subject to interpretation based on the LC. The LC is LAC has still not been demarcated. It's still not been delineated. If you look at the same LAC from the Chinese sites, you can go to the Chinese sites and look at them. They are in a totally different area. If you look at it from our side, they are in a totally different area. So there are subject to varying interpretation. One thing I can assure you that if there is an encroachment which takes place, the Indian Army definitely raises it up, and based on my experience, what I have seen, even Doklam, if Doklam, which you refer to, we were aware that these guys were trying to go into an area which was not supposed to be theirs.
That's
Uh,
right.
yeah, but as per them, it is somewhere else, and as per them, the tri-junction is somewhere else. As per us, the tri-junction is somewhere else. But we insisted, and these people had to finally relent. It's a different matter that in the same in their area, they have now started building up more construction, etc., which is kind of an eyeball to eyeball situation, which is good. I personally feel these guys used to never stay on the border. Now they are forced to be confronting you based on our forward posture. So
That's right.
in a
I've
way,
heard that too.
yeah, in a way, they are also getting subject to the weather, vagaries of weather, etc. And they have to sustain themselves at that level. I have gone through the physical standard study of the Chinese. They are suffering from high levels of obesity, high level. I mean, their physical standards are actually very, very poor, and I've seen them on the ground. I actually have had tussles myself when I was a youngster. When I was commanding a company in the same general area. I mean, not exactly in the place where he's referring to, but overall the terrain has been is similar across the entire eastern areas, whether it is Arunachal, Sikkim, or for that matter,
So you are basically saying that you wouldn't characterize this as a ingress
yeah,
because
what,
since the boundary the LAC has not been agreed on, you can't really say that these two villages where the buildup has happened,
yeah,
we can't actually
yeah,
say that it's
yeah.
in Indian territory. That's what
That
you're
is
saying.
that is one point, but at the same time, I would like to highlight two things. Firstly, is that the Chinese initiative to create the Xiaokong villages. Now, these Xiaokong villages are total 628 in numbers, which they have planned, out of which
Mhm.
427 villages are to be the frontline villages located like the ones which he's trying to show right up front,
Ah,
right up
that's very
front.
interesting.
And
Yes.
the meaning of Xiaokang villages, I'm sure the ambassador will agree with me, is well off villages. What they are
Hmm.
actually doing is they are making it like a dual purpose villages where they can actually hide certain elements, certain quantum of military like equipment or weapons or even troops. Plus, they are trying to settle more and more of these Hans and also people from that area as their eyes and ears for for
Hmm.
for intelligence along the border, so they don't want to get surprised that should the Indian Army get inside uh, as a quid pro quo, if we have to undertake, like for example, what happened in the Galban area, we had to do something in Kailash. So they have devised this kind of a strategy. Now they are going hell for lather in the sense they are having helipads in there, they are having OFC connection, they are having communications, they are actually building it like a proper dual use villages where the people are going to something like a territorial army type of a
That's right.
concept they are trying to develop. India is aware of it, and as a response to this, India has also planned similar villages, which is called the vibrant villages. And we are planning 2,923 such villages. In fact, work is already on from 2022 onwards, and it will go up to 2026. In phase one, we are constructing 663 villages. These are all open source information which I am trying to give you. The reason why we have started doing this is exactly to prevent these guys from taking advantage. So we would also be
Mm.
trying to inhabitate these areas. You'd be surprised that in Uttarakhand there were scores of villages which had been abandoned by our own people.
Oh,
And that was a worry, because if the villages are abandoned, these guys would not even have to construct anything. They would just walk across and occupy these villages.
yeah, yeah.
So these villages are going to be part of that initiative, or they are already undertaking these initiatives, especially in Uttarakhand. If you remember, the late CDS General Bipin Rawat had mentioned about these. He used to call them as ghost villages. So now
Mm.
these ghost villages, but there is a challenge for us how to inhibit them. You have to give them incentive. People, why should somebody leave Pithoragarh and go and settle down somewhere bang on the border? So we have to give some
Yeah.
amount of. I was looking at people who are getting recruited as Agniveers, etc. from, and Uttarakhand gives a large number of soldiers. So in fact they have one of the highest numbers of soldiers. They
Oh, that's very
they
interesting.
they could be given incentive to settle down here, act as scouts, and be our Indian eyes and ears. So we are seized of these issues, and
So we're replicating what the Chinese are doing on their side of the border, really. We're
absolutely,
playing catch
absolutely.
up. We're
But the
playing catch
challenge,
up to a certain
yeah, yeah,
extent.
but the challenge for us is a little more, in the sense we are a democratic country, and China is an authoritarian regime which can
Mm.
force people to sit down in these villages, although they are
Yeah.
calling it as well off, because Zakong means well off, and we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. If I can just bring in the ambassador,
Yeah, sure.
you know, ambassador, what do you think? What are your views on this? You think that the Chinese, are one step ahead of India in the sense with the way they are populating and militarizing the disputed areas in the LAC?
Nina, first of all, let me compliment Professor Nithiyanandan and his team for undertaking this exercise. I have seen Takshila Geopolitical Geospatial Bulletin on the Substack. It's very impressive work. And in fact, we need to do more such work within our country, because otherwise
Yes,
what
that's
happened in the
true.
past, that this kind of information was not available in public domain, and very often we had to depend on Western sources to arrive at our own conclusions, which is not the way things should be handled. Now, let me, before I come to the two specific areas this report highlights, Zone A and Zone B. By way of background, let me mention that even though there is no common understanding of on line of actual control in the eastern sector as in other sectors of
Yeah.
India borders, both sides agree on the basis of LAC in eastern sector.
Oh,
Chinese have also conceded that the LAC is based on what they call illegal McMahon line of 1914. So that they don't, except one or two pockets, they have disputed, but otherwise they don't dispute that. The problem arises on interpretation of what is McMahon line. Chinese
mm,
preference is to do a literal transposition of very small scale map which was appended to Shimla Convention of 1914 and do it literally. Now,
oh,
as it has happened with progress in surveying and cartographic methodology, we have a much better understanding of where exactly the so-called McMahon line is lying. On our side, we have suggested, and for good reason, that the final memorandum given by Henry McMahon had made it clear that the boundary which was drawn between Tibet and British India in 1914 was based on the highest watershed principle in the eastern sector.
mm, Yes,
So
yes. I don't understand the watershed
yes,
principle,
what we
and I
need
was
to
going
look
to
at
ask you to
uh,
explain it.
what we need to look at is highest watershed in the area, rather than literal transposition of very old small scale map on modern large scale maps. So that's completely
Mm.
unscientific, and that's something we have rejected out of hand. Now, while we agree on the basis of line of actual control distance sector, there are certain areas where two sides have
Dispute.
different perceptions, as General Dushyant Singh brought out. So we agree that these are areas where we need to arrive at common understanding of the LAC. But from our perspective, LAC is along the highest watershed. There are some pockets where Chinese are in what we call adverse possession. That means, they had moved in and occupied certain areas. For instance, in Western Kameng district, you have Thagla Ridge,
Yeah.
which should be the line of actual control or boundary. In 1986, they moved south of Thagla Ridge and they
Mm.
occupied part of Sumdrongchu Valley and Namkhachu valleys. They continued to stay put there. So that is under adverse possession. Likewise, Longju, that was talked about. Longju, we had an Assam Rifles post until August 1959, when Chinese moved in and they occupied. They came with
Yeah.
much larger manpower. So our Assam Rifles personnel had to withdraw from that area. That became the Longju incident of 1959. That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
time when things started deteriorating. After end of border conflict 1962, Chinese once again occupied Longju. So Longju
Oh.
has been under what we call adverse possession of China since 1959. Migutun
Mm.
is on the Chinese side of LAC. We don't dispute that.
Mm.
So when it comes to Zone B, Migutun, as Professor Nithiyanandan brought out, it used to be a small village, but in recent years, as Dushyant Singh mentioned, Chinese have stepped up infrastructure building activities
Development.
close to line of actual control. And this has taken many forms, including development of roads, other infrastructure, and also so-called Shokhang Tsun, or well-off villages.
Yeah.
So they are coming up. We have responded, as General Dushyant Singh mentioned, with our own. Earlier we used to a border area development program. Now we call it Vibrant Villages program. But the fact remains that Chinese have what we can call a first movers advantage in
Yes.
terms of infrastructure development.
Clearly.
They
Mm.
have advantage of terrain, Tibet being a flat though very high plateau, whereas on our side we have river valleys where it's very difficult to develop infrastructure. And they have, in recent years, especially since developments in Eastern Ladakh in the spring of 2020, they have accelerated infrastructure development activities. For instance, opposite Arunachal Pradesh, you have a rail link coming right up to Ningchi, which is not far from line of actual control. So we have this, second mover's disadvantage, which will continue for some time. It's not going to go away. So this is where we
So
stand.
we are basically reactive rather than
We
proactive.
are catching up. We are trying to
Uh,
catch up. We are disadvantaged by the nature of terrain. We are disadvantaged by the fact that Chinese can put in more resources than what we can do. And we are also disadvantaged to some extent. We can persuade our people to sort of settle in these border villages. We can't force anyone. Whereas
That's
Chinese can,
right.
as Dushyant Singh mentioned, literally they are bringing in, Han settlers, ex-servicemen, and sometimes even PLA personnel to settle down in the so-called Shokhong Sun, or well-off villages. So that problem will continue. Now, third point I would like to make here, and this is coming to Professor Nithiyanandan's presentation. On Migutun and Longju, there's no doubt. Migutun is on the Chinese side of LAC. Longju, we believe, is on our side of international boundary. But under adverse possession of China as
Yeah.
of Lower that Professor Nithiyanandan mentioned, as per information he has given, seems to be on our side of
That's right.
yeah. Likewise, I'm unable to comment on so-called Zone A because it's unnamed village in the bulletin put out by
Unnamed village, but it's in
yeah,
the Millen,
but it's on
alongside
the
the Millen River.
Millen River. According to their interpretation, it falls on Indian side of LAC. Here, I would like to pose a query to Professor
The
Nithiyanandan.
professor.
That how do we interpret the vector boundary? He has gone by Surf India, vector boundary. Now, what kind of scale we are looking at? What is available in public domain? Ajal Dushyant Singh can give more updated information on that. Government of Arunachal Pradesh releases maps which are 1:750,000. In some other areas, they're available in 1:250,000, which makes it a little difficult to interpret exact alignment. And for reasons of national security, we are not sharing large scale metric maps in the public domain. So this is one area where
That's very
interpretation
interesting
becomes
also.
difficult. So one way of looking at it, and this is a suggestion I'm making to Professor Nithiyanandan, that satellite imagery leaves no doubt about highest watershed in the area. So if you transpose or interpret highest watershed in the area, you'll have a very clear idea of what is our perception of the line of actual control or international
Professor,
boundary
why don't you come in and tell us, Professor
in
Nithiyanandam?
the eastern sector, with some exceptions. You have exceptions like I mentioned earlier, Longju, which is under adverse possession of China. You have Namkhachu Valley, parts of Namkhachu Valley, and Sumdrungchu Valley, and some other areas. I will not go into detail. So this is one way of sort of validating our exercise and not depending entirely on vector boundary available in the public domain, because they are not, that General Dushyant Singh can perhaps comment on that, they are not, they're on relatively small scale map, and they're not.
Actually, Ambassador, the professor did bring this up when he and I were talking earlier about the fact that there are, open source maps. And Professor, please explain that.
One last point before Professor comes in. One last point I would like to make is that when it comes to any such change in ground realities or change in status quo, I think this is something which needs to be debated in public domain. It's very important, and this is something we have done in the past, because transparency in these matters is extremely important to safeguard our interests. We have a pattern of behavior on part of China, which is sometimes described as gray zone operations or gray zone warfare, where they try to change facts the ground incrementally through military and economic coercion, other means. They tried in a very significant way in eastern Ladakh, as you're aware, since spring of 2020. They tried to do that in Yangtze area, as General Dushyant Singh mentioned, in eastern sector in Arunachal Pradesh, which we foiled. But this is something which will continue. We should have no doubt about the fact that Chinese tactics involve creeping encroachment. So if they find any vacant pocket, they will expand it. Like in Longju, they had a much smaller presence earlier, which they seem to have expanded now. So this, I think, Dushyant Singh may like to talk about it. So studies like what Takshila Institution has carried out become very useful, because they provide empirical evidence-based conclusions on what's happening on the ground. Because these are time series satellite images where you can compare geospatial data over a period and see the changes that are taking place.
That's brilliant. Yes. Yes, we must commend you, Professor Nityanandam.
Yeah,
If you can just
thank you, sir.
come in and explain
Yeah,
about that, the map.
sure. Yeah, sure. I'll do that. Thank you, sir, for the compliments first. And then, as you rightly said, the vector boundary can be inaccurate if you increase the scale. And the one which we have used is 1:1 million. Unfortunately, that is the one which is available to us in open domain. And secondly, our concern is this is the boundary being used by all the geospatial servers which is running from the country. So for general public, this is a boundary which is available to us at this moment in open domain. And this is also used in Google Maps, and this is also used in all other geospatial service which is running from the country. However, as you rightly said, the climb line, for some it is the Indian territory, for some it is their own territory. It is evident when we looked at the maps from different geospatial servers operating from different regions. Let's say the same Google Maps outside the country, the boundary is completely different. And the larger point over here is what is being used by people at global level, especially UN and other agencies, which use something based on the OpenStreetMaps. So when the
That's
OpenStreetMap
right.
boundary is something different than this, that is something which could be when we refer it in through other studies, if and when we want to refer it for any study, whether it is disaster or any other study we want to carry out using the UN data or the global level data sets, the boundary over there is completely different. So I agree
Okay,
with
so
you.
if we can just bring in the general, I'm quite intrigued by the Sela Tunnel and our infrastructure that is being built on the by the military on our side of the border. Does it have I mean, does it match up to China's at all? I mean, do we command the heights? Does China have greater the potential for firepower? Do we have the ability to move swiftly secure our positions if the need arises? I mean, they have, as the Ambassador Khan actually said, they're creeping, border towards our border is a fact of life,
Yeah.
right, General?
Yeah. First of all, Nina, I think the ambassador has laid out the historical facts absolutely correct.
Beautifully,
Yeah,
yes.
there are some adverse occupations. What happens in adverse occupations is that there is a stretch of area which on a million map will look to you like a line, right? For
Hmm.
example, the Longju area which he's referring to is actually it stretches, as per my knowledge, it's about 8 kilometers in depth. That is the quantum of area which is disputed, where we also go in, we also do our activities, they come, they also do their activities. It's kind of a boxing match which takes place between this 8 kilometers of area, because both sides agree to disagree where exactly is the boundary. And the confusion comes because of the fact that we believe in the watershed principle, and they are recognizing illegal, they are recognizing McMahon line. I have also seen that the Chinese adopt a particular approach for a particular thing based on their interest. So sometimes they have actually applied watershed principle. Like, for example, in one of the areas where I was deployed, they suddenly started talking about, this is not the watershed, right? So they can do anything possible to suit their argument. It is for us to push them beyond that. And so I was part of one of those altercations. Finally, it would have boiled down to it was way back in 94. And since then we started off all this pushing match, dhakka mukki, all those things
Push and
started.
shove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first of all, a million map will not give you the accurate, boundaries where they are. Uh, we
Uh-huh.
work we work on metric maps. 1:1, 1 square is to 1 kilometer, which is a fairly detailed map. In fact, goes by each and every. We can in fact count the contours of the mountains. So you'll have to see exactly where is the watershed to define whether it is in our area or it is in a disputed area. So from that perspective, if this was, I mean, I retired in 2020 January. If this was the case that there was some kind of an encroachment, believe you me, Eastern Army commander by now would have been on his toes and having a boxing match there, or having a very very rough time. You imagine what happened during Doklam. Doklam, I was also handling the Doklam because I was Chief of Staff Eastern Command at that point in time.
Yeah.
And in fact, even me and the Army Commander, we both had to go there as Lieutenant Generals to ensure that the Chinese don't get into the areas which they wanted to go. So
Yeah.
therefore, the correct positioning can be explained by the people on the ground
Mm.
who are looking at it. But at the same time, I would tell you that these disputed areas, the second area, Zone A, which he's referring to, if I am not wrong, is in the same sector. There are two rivers, Upper Subansiri, Lower Subansiri. These are the two valleys which are present there. And in the valley, our positions are fairly in the depth, right? We are not very close to the border, and that is the advantage which these people take to move inside, do some activities, then we also go in, and then we push them out of that place. So that kind of a match is going on. As regards these constructions are concerned, I think we need to let the people on the ground who are serving in that area to decide whether it is an encroachment or whether it is part of perceived Chinese territory or Indian territory. If there was some truth in it, I think by now the entire nation would have been up in arms. If it is
I
quite
think Professor Nityanandam is now making it public.
no, no,
I think for the first time.
no, no,
No,
no.
sir, we
Let,
never
let me
said
let me tell
in
you
this
one thing.
document, yeah,
Let me tell you
we
one thing.
never said it's an encroachment. Whatever the line we have officially with us, we just plotted out if there is a development within the line. That's what the whole study is about.
Yeah.
Uh,
So this is
I'm sure
very
the people in
Norm,
ground
that's the
knows better.
interpretation.
Normally million sheets are used by the aircrafts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we use a meter sheet. So there is a difference of understanding also of the as far as the LC is concerned, LAC is concerned. So I would not like to comment exactly on the constructions, whether they are inside our territory or outside. They are subject to incorrect interpretation, and to me it looks like that there would be some kind of a incorrect interpretation. There was a parliamentary team which had gone basically after this incident is of 2021 when they first started doing this
Yeah.
activity. This team went into that area. I believe they were shown the areas, and they are convinced that it is not part of their it's not part of, or as perceived by us, it is not part of our territory, or maybe it is in the disputed area.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
Nina, can I come in here?
I wanted to get the ambassador in to tell us about this, the
Uh,
broader geopolitical
you know,
implications of this.
One, Nina, when it comes to line of actual control, I mean, international boundary in eastern sector is very different, because Chinese are claiming most of Arunachal Pradesh, what they call the Zangnan or South Tibet, which of course we have not
That's how it's
accepted,
pronounced.
and
Yeah.
we have maintained and reiterated recently after Chinese Foreign Office came up with a statement on Prime Minister's visit to Arunachal Pradesh for inauguration of Sela Pass, that Arunachal Pradesh has been, is, and will remain part of India. So on that,
Correct.
no doubt. For us, problem is limited to how do we interpret line of actual control. So we shouldn't be using terminology like disputed, because for us this is not disputed area. We have certain areas where two sides are different perception LAC. Some areas, we are not patrolling right up to our perception LAC. For instance, Longju. We are not going into Longju village because that area, which was initially a small village, they have, as you can see from satellite imagery, they have expanded it very substantially. So clearly, it's no longer possible for us to do patrolling in that area. Lower, again, that Professor Nithiyanandam mentioned. I think my advice to him again will be go by high resolution satellite imagery, which are much more than 1 million, which, as General Dushyant Singh rightly pointed out, are not very accurate. But you have high resolution satellite imagery where plotting a watershed boundary is not difficult at all. I mean, this can be done very easily. So you'll have an idea that what is our perception of line of actual control, except in some pockets, which I mentioned earlier, where Chinese are in adverse position, including Longju. But, I think it's difficult. We should not, be, if there are, problems relating to change in the status quo, I think it's important to discuss it publicly.
So
General
do we have
Dushyant,
anything? Do
no,
we have any? I mean, in the sense, do we have a strategy? Do we have a diplomatic
I
bag
think
of tricks
a
to
problem is
counter
that
China?
many of these issues. No, I'll not go into that. We can discuss it later. Uh, when it comes to border management, for instance, Eastern Ladakh, uh, the very fact that we have had 21 rounds of discussions at the level of corps commanders, which remain inconclusive, indicates that Chinese did
Yes.
change status quo in April, May 2020, and they
Yeah.
are denying patrolling to Indian troops to several areas, which we were visiting until early 2020, including in Depsan Plains, including in Demchok, including in
Hmm.
so-called 5 friction points, where we have agreed on some kind of disengagement. So some of these issues are not being discussed in public domain. Studies like Professor Nithiyanandan's will help us to understand the problem better in the public domain. Because otherwise we'll be sometimes in denial, which is not in our interest.
No,
Uh, I
I would like to
so
add here that as far as Eastern Ladakh is concerned, we do recognize that there has been a change in the status quo, and despite the fact that we had undertaken a quid pro quo action, we have been able to reach some kind of a stable but a sensitive situation still. So therefore, there is the scope of going back to the original. I'm looking at the pre-2020 situation that has still not arrived, and that is the reason why we are undertaking this core commander level talks. And also there are talks, I believe, going in the working group also at the national level as well. So that point is very well accepted, and I think by and large the public is aware that there has been a certain amount of change in the status quo. As far as I was only contesting the eastern sector. In the eastern sector, if there was any change in the status quo as perceived by us, I'm sure we would have started a similar process there also. So that's my only argument to what, especially that the one which is 5 kilometers as told by Professor Nityanand. So in my view, I think there should have been a similar process. You're better aware that being the ambassador of China in the past, that something like this wouldn't have been accepted by us also, and it wouldn't have been kept quiet. If
Yeah.
nothing, there would have been some amount of activities going on, at least at the diplomatic level, as far as
yeah.
the villages are concerned, which Nityanand is trying to highlight. As far as the Sela Tunnel is concerned, you had asked me that question.
Yeah.
Definitely, you see what happens as far as the our area is concerned. Whether you start from Tri Junction up to the boundary of Bhutan, it's bad on our side. And when I say bad on our side, purely because of the fact of terrain, weather, and also infrastructure.
Hmm.
In fact, I am aware of certain roads which we have been trying to construct during my whole career. The
Oh.
road has not been able to be constructed because of engineering problems. It's just not
Hmm.
forward. So our side is difficult to reach as far as forwardmost posts are concerned. Like the ambassador said, there are certain valleys where we are unable to go, frequently up to the passes. Say, for example, in the RALP, rest of the Arunachal Pradesh area, which this particular area which is referring to, it is also known as the rest of the Arunachal Pradesh area.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, especially the terrain is bad out here, very bad here. Sela Tunnel gives us a shortened time frame to mobilize. And the way we overcome these disadvantages are that we are now doing a forward, posturing of a lot of our troops, reserves, balancing. We have done all these in the last few years post Galwan. A number of changes have taken place that I need not elaborate on the
Yeah,
because
no, but basically we are
Yeah.
moving.
and we are
I just want.
aware of the fact that we have a relative disadvantage in terms of that is why when we negotiate with mutual equal response time, in the sense it is not by distance. If we say that we will move by 50 kilometers from the IB or from the
Yeah,
line of actual control, we will be at a disadvantage.
absolutely.
That guy has got a flat area. If he goes 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers behind, he'll be on the LAC Pronto. I will
Yeah,
take time.
yeah,
So we are
yeah.
so we are also negotiating on these terms in the border level talks. It's not going to be purely by distance. It's going to be by reaction time, that we must get an equal opportunity to react. Whether that guy agrees or not, that is the $1 million question. That's why we are having, I think it's the 28th round of talks. It is
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah.
Ambassador will bear with me, it is probably the longest running dialogue which is taking place on the borders in the history.
Actually, no,
I
we had
just,
a longer
if
one for
if I
the
can,
Bangtung area. We started negotiating in 1990.
Samdrangchu, yeah, Samdrangchu.
yeah.
Sundarangchu, Ramkachu, we
Yeah.
finally arrived at some understanding in
Oh, yeah.
1995. I
Yeah.
happened to be the negotiator from Indian side
Yeah,
in
but so
as
in
Director
between,
China.
yeah,
I
but in
know
between
just
we had left,
yeah.
in between we had left Samdrangchu for a while and then recommenced, I think, the
No, I mean they stayed put at Bangtung and they didn't pull out.
yeah.
We had our posts right across Chinese subposts in Sumdurgchu area. And as part of disengagement, also, we didn't make any change in our patrolling in that area. That continued. So that actually took 9 years, much longer. But very important point that you have made, uh, that when it comes to negotiating troop disengagement or de-escalation or de-induction, the principle which we have always followed and which is reflected in the agreement on military CBMs of 1996, that it will be time taken to induct or de-induct forces,
Absolutely.
which will factor in nature of terrain, infrastructure, and other relevant factors. So
That's very
this
clear.
has been,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is an agreed principle. It's reflected in agreement of 1996. I happen to be a lead negotiator for that agreement. So yeah, we have maintained
But
very
Ambassador, if I could
consistently.
just come in and ask you, what is the status quo now? Now, since General has said that it's the 28th round of talks, so are we still going round and round the same topic,
You know,
and do you see it continuing?
No, this is Nina again. I mean, this is one area where what is available in public domain is relatively limited. So one can't
So it's a touchy topic, basically.
say anything with any degree of certitude. But what has happened that in some of the so-called friction points, disengagement has been reached, but
I
uh,
see.
it has involved the creation of buffer zones, uh,
Mm.
which means that certain areas our troops are patrolling earlier, they're unable to access those areas. There have been some restrictions on Chinese side as well, but two big pockets, especially Depsang Plains,
That is
Yes.
and lesser extent Demchok, we have not been able to work out even disengagement. And even, the disengagement worked out in those five friction points, that's meant to be a temporary expedient
I
because
see.
our position is that status quo ante as of May 2020 should be restored, at least in terms of patrolling by two sides.
Yeah.
regard,
If
But
I
thank
may,
you very much.
if
Yes,
regarding
yes,
the
please. I'm running out
if
of
I may
time, so we have
clarify,
1 minute.
yeah, I'll quickly clarify two things here. One is the zone A we are discussing, Ambassador, which is 15 kilometers on the valley in Mainling. So that can be seen on the slope of a mountain on the western side in the river. Second thing is general. What we are trying to use is something which is available to everyone, like all the researchers and common public, which they can access through. But then, as Ambassador said, we can also calculate the watershed boundary or water based boundary based on watershed principle. That's not difficult. But then, as you also pointed out, there are places where the watershed principle is agreed to them, not agreed to us. When we looked at even the spot A, the zone A, where there is a boundary available in other databases which actually follows watershed principle, where there is a boundary, what we have is slightly different. So there are confusions to common people based on the geospatial data which is available to the researchers and the common people. Perhaps we may need to aggressively release, or there could be better data sets which is available to people like us, so that the better understanding on the situation happens over there could be feasible to us.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is
thank you.
not a very likely near future. But from our side, it's very clear that the line of actual control in eastern sector essentially follows the highest watershed, and that you can interpret very easily in a relatively high resolution satellite imagery.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do you have a concluding remark to make, General?
Yeah, I just want to say that, everything is subject to interpretation. Even watershed, if you actually go on the ground, people fight for meters. You were talking about watershed, people fight for meters. And these meters become kilometers in terms of magnitude of the dispute. That's the thing which I'm trying to say, that at the ground level, frictions are created over meters. And
Yeah.
this should be understood by people.
A general problem actually in watershed boundary arises where watershed is intersected by rivers.
That's right.
Because then it becomes a problem. Which spur you take for going down to river, which
That's
spur you
right.
take for going up to watershed. So that
That's
becomes
right.
a problem. But by and large,
Yeah.
interpretation of highest watershed is not difficult.
Yeah, but I was
Yeah.
only talking about that the dispute, a small
Yeah,
dispute,
yeah. On ground there are problems. Yeah.
a small
But
dispute
but
can
we
be.
go by our perception LAC.
Yeah.
We don't go by their perception LAC.
A small dispute
Anyway,
leads to higher
I,
escalation.
yeah, I'm sorry, but I have to conclude this very, very interesting discussion. I mean, I don't know who's committing the cartographic aggression. Is it China's ingress or India's, standing up for what it believes is is our border? I think it's a very interesting discussion, particularly after the information that the professor shared with all of us. So thank you first, Professor Yogeshwaran, for being on the show. Thank you, General,
Thank you.
for your on the ground experience that really made a difference. And thank you, Ambassador, for all those insights on the actual discussions that takes place with the Chinese. Thank you very much.